Blessed be your name. One of my favorites. Talks about the highs and the lows of life, and it's God's faithful through it. Let's sing together. Blessed be your name in the land that is plentiful, where your streams of abundance flow. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name when clouds shining down, when I walk through the You are my all in all. Here's your bonus. If your voices are still holding up. You are my strength when I am weak. You are the treasure that I seek. You are my all in all. Seeking you as a precious jewel, Lord, to give up I'd be a fool. You are my all in all. Thank you for your singing. Please be seated.
So before we come to our questions and our discussion around the table, I thought I would just take a minute just to continue our conversation briefly for a couple of minutes, just as we kind of lead into our Family Matters discussion about love. I don't know if this has kind of ever happened to you, but a couple of weeks ago as I was, we've been working through, as I said earlier, we've been working through this topic of walking in the path of love. Loving as God has called us to love. And within the church body, within our world that we live in, within our relationships, that what is to be on display in our lives is the love that God has set as an example for us. And a couple of weeks ago, as I was kind of continuing to think through this, and it just came this place where I was just going, man, God, I don't know if you've ever kind of responded with something's happened in your life and you've had that sarcastic response in your mind of going, thanks God, this was fantastic. I really appreciated this moment or this circumstance or this situation. God, thanks a lot for that. Not quite sure why you're doing that. For me, love is one of those things where a lot of times I'm kind of like, God, thanks for making this so hard. I don't know if you've ever thought about that, but I think sometimes we're so flippant with how we think about love, and we're so flippant even in our conversations within the church, because we talk a lot about love here. But it can be so easy to kind of lose focus of the realities of how difficult God's calling is. And when he calls us to love him with all our heart, soul, and mind, when he calls us to love each other, as we think of this agape love, I don't know about you, but as I start to say, God, I want to see this in my life. I want to live in such a way. I want this to be displayed in my life. And then I fail and I fail and I fail. And I have those moments of saying, gee, God, thanks for making this so hard. And I say that because I want to bring us to that place as we engage in these conversations about what love looks like in our lives, lived out in our community, lived out in our church. I want us to come within the context of saying, listen, we need to understand this call that God has given us to love is not an easy call. Let's not engage in these conversations kind of in a, can I use that word, in a flippant manner of saying that this is something that's easy to do. Let's recognize this is incredibly challenging. Because God is not calling us to occasional acts or deeds or nice things that we can do for each other or for our community. God is calling us to be people of love. That our very lives and our lifestyles are defined and describing the love of God to others. An incredibly hard thing to come to. But as we have these conversations around the tables, as we discuss what love looks like in our lives, can we do so in a way where we're recognizing this is a challenge? This is difficult. And let's not answer these questions in kind of a flippant, easy way that maybe we have done prior in the church. That just talks about good deeds or good things that we can do. But how do we live that lifestyle of love? How do we be people who are truly loving others as God has called us to? And so as we engage in these questions, can I encourage us to think in that manner? And I don't want that to be a damper on conversation. We're going to go into conversations and be like, Joel said this is too hard, so we just give up. I don't want that. But I do want that reality, that truth of the challenge that this is as we talk about love, that we keep that in mind as we have these conversations. Okay? All right. Question number 1. Bit of testimony time. Around your tables, can I ask that you just kind of share how have you experienced God's love in a unique way, in a different way? What do I mean by that? I was out walking my dog the other day, and I came to that place where I was just enjoying God's creation. I was just, it just kind of was coming to me going, man, it's a beautiful world we live in. And thank you, God, for that. But then also came along that thought of, hey, there is an aspect of this that we have been given stewardship of this world. And so there is a blessing with God's creation, and there is a joy in a saying thank you to God, and I have experienced God's love in my life by the beauty of our creation. But then I also know and experience God's love by Him saying, hey, Joel, I'm calling you to be a steward of what I've made. I'm calling you to care for and to take care of. And God's love is displayed in my life through God's care of me and the responsibilities that God gives me. So that's kind of where my thought went as I asked this question. How have you experienced God's love in your life? And maybe in a unique way. So yes, we've experienced God's love through the cross of Christ and through what He has done for us through our salvation. But maybe more as we discuss in our table, hitting on that unique way. How have I experienced God's love? So maybe just take a few minutes around your tables, if you are willing, just to kind of chat about your testimony of God's love in your life as you've experienced it. Okay? Go. right. I know I'm not able to give you a ton of time on these questions, so I'll give you about a minute more, wrap up what you're saying, and we will move on to the second question, okay? So we'll give you one more minute, kind of wrap up what someone's been saying. All right. Let's move on. Question number two. It's kind of maybe a bit of two parts to this one. So over the past number of weeks, maybe even a couple of months, we've been talking about love here in the church, and we've been defining godly love. Said it this morning: others-focused, self-sacrificing, unconditional, relentlessly pursuing, relentlessly forgiving. What are the challenges? Both the obvious and maybe not so obvious challenges in loving in such a way. What are the challenges in loving in a godly way? Okay, so take some time, kind of discuss that around the table. Again, within the context of God's example set for us, right? What are the challenges, both obvious and not so obvious, in our loving God or loving others in a godly way? All right? the first one was hard. Okay, we'll give you a minute. Maybe just kind of wrap up your final thoughts. All right. So let me just ask: are there any thoughts out of there? What are some of the challenges that you thought of that you might want to just kind of share with the rest of us that you kind of came up with at your table? Or what are some of the challenges of loving in a godly way? Anybody want to make a comment? Judy? I'll bring you the mic so everybody can hear.
We all find it easy to love the lovable, but we all, under our circumstances, have people that are not lovable. They've been hurt, they're not trusting, they can even be belligerent. And how do you continue a relationship like that? You know, praying for them and just being patient and waiting it out. But yeah, it can be very difficult sometimes. We live in a large seniors complex, and we have a lot of people that come in. Some of the people now, even from the street, we're not all seniors. They're using it as subsidized housing, I guess. And so we had a drug dealer living next door to us for over a year. We've had some people that have problems with emotional control and violence. And we thought that our expectations moving in there were very, very different. And now we're finding we're in the middle of a mission field. And some of these people, you just have to, I guess it's a pride that you think that you can love somebody enough, you can get through to them and build a relationship. But some people, you just can't. You just have to pray and let them go and leave them to God and stay out of their way because, it's some people are really hard to love.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Judy. Anybody else? Just something? Oh, Marge. Go on. Yeah.
As a married person, sometimes it's hard to love my husband. So, some days, especially during hay fever season, he snores. And I have discovered I did not marry his snoring. I married all of him. So in a godly way, I have to love his snoring as well as the rest of him.
All right. We'll do one more. Noah?
I learn from God's mistakes I try to learn from them, and I make mistakes. But one thing I did make mistakes that is really big is mostly I punched a hole in my closet. I was really angry, I was really furious mostly, and I had a conversation with my mom, and it was just utterly, I couldn't just, I didn't want to hit anybody mostly, that's one thing, because my rage is just volcano of that. So I accidentally hit my closet door, and it cost between about $5,000 or about between $100. So they dropped it down to $400. And it's just, I try to learn from mistakes that much, so it's just, I don't know how.
It's that ginger hair, Noah. All right. We'll keep moving. Third question, describe what godly love looks like, lived out amongst God's people, the church. So within kind of the church context, whether you attend here at Hartland Baptist Church or you attend a different church and you're visiting us this morning, what does loving God look like in that context of love within the body of Christ? Okay, so some different things to kind of think through. What are some practical ways godly love can be demonstrated in our midst? And then maybe kind of a follow-up part of that to jot down some notes. What are some ways we could improve in demonstrating love in the context of the body of Christ here at Hartland Baptist? Okay? So lots to discuss there. All right? Take a few minutes to talk about those topics. Okay? All right. I know that was a lot to discuss in one question, but we'll give you a minute to kind of wrap up your thoughts. And for the sake of time, we will keep moving on to our final question. So I'll give you one more minute, finish up your thoughts, jot down your last notes, and then we will move on. Okay. In the Gospel of John, Jesus says that they will know you are my disciples. They'll know you are my followers by your love for each other. So our final question that I want to bring us to is similar to number 3, but just the context has been changed. What does godly love look like lived out in our daily lives, in our families, and in our communities? In our families and in our communities. How are we showing God's love to others that they see that we are followers of Jesus Christ? What are some practical ways godly love can be demonstrated in our home and community? We as a church, as God's people, what are some ways we can improve in engaging in that and in loving our community and in our homes as we are called to? Okay, so take some time to discuss and chew on that one, and we'll bring our time to an end, okay? Godly love in our community. right. There's a lot in those conversations. Hopefully this is just a beginning or a continuation of conversations that are ongoing within our lives and within our church family here, that we continue these types of conversations, and that this is what we are thinking on. How do we love better? Can't be a better conversation than that. How do we love better and as God desires us to? Anybody want to just something to share of those last two questions in regards to what is love? How do we love in a better way here within our family context and in our community context? Anyone just something to share, a thought or idea to kind of wrap us up?
I think there's a need sometimes is when we don't see someone for quite a while to be able to give them a call, because we might not be the only one, and they're struggling or whatever, but we don't know everybody, but somebody knows another person in here, and if they don't see them for a while, we should contact them. It's just not giving. We can always tell you to, phone this person or whatever, but I think it has to be up to us to follow through, because you can't, catch everybody who's sort of through the cracks.
Thanks, Bruce. Anyone else? Just something, Jenny?
Just one of a few things we discussed under loving in the church context. I think it's pretty easy in church to develop kind of cliques and have, your little comfort zone circle. So reaching outside of that and connecting with people that maybe might not be in your clique. And I struggled to know how to summarize this, but just I had an interesting conversation with a brother-in-law who's not a Christian recently, and he just talked about how in church there's often this feeling of kind of a holier than thou sort of idea, and just I think sometimes we even think we're being good Christians and witnessing to people, but kind of giving off that sort of vibe. So just being real and vulnerable and willing to just show our humanity with others. It can be loving.
Thanks for that. Bruce, take the spotlight today.
This has been a pet peeve of mine, is the aspect when it's sort of a favorite saying is, how are you doing? What we have to do is, if they want to talk, we have to be prepared there to listen to them. It's so often you sort of say that and then you walk off, but that person could be really hurting. And it's happened to me that the person wanted to talk, but I was negligent and walked off, got busy or something. But I think we have to be willing to sit and listen to the person, because they could be really struggling. And sometimes I think it's just that we're scared to do that. But don't use the expression, and don't make sure that you're willing to listen to that individual.
Yeah, I just, we've been talking about this in our Bible study, and I'm going to say a couple of things we didn't talk about in our group, but we talked in our group here about, like in 1 John, it says, "Dear children, let us not love with words or tongue, but with action and in truth." And right before that, it says, "If anybody has material possessions and sees his brother in need, but has no pity on him, how can the love of God be in him?" And I've just been thinking about, well, how could we recognize and demonstrate our love and care for others within the body better than what we do now? And I think one of the struggles is knowing where the needs are. And one way we get to know the needs is by getting to know people very well, and then they will share the needs with us. But maybe there's some other way. If people have needs, maybe they can, but somehow the office know, and then we can try to match up needs with just some way to, I just don't know if there could be needs out there that we don't know about that we could meet. But if we don't know about them, we can't meet them, right? But caring and loving each other is really what we're called to do, and part of the struggle is to know what the needs are and understanding appropriate ways to respond.
I think we'll end on that note because it's afternoon and probably Sunday school teachers are downstairs going, come get your kids. So I was going to read exactly those verses that Stuart just mentioned as a closing as we leave this place. 1 John chapter 3, verse 16 says, "This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters. If anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Dear children, let us not love with words or speech," right? Let's not just ask how you're doing, but let's actually care. Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. That in truth, that's a big one, isn't it? So as we go this week, let's continue to think about what it looks like for us to love each other. Let's continue to be praying that God would be doing that work in our hearts and our minds, that we would be becoming people of love. And let's go and focus on how can we love others, love the people around us in a godly way, not in a transactional way. So God bless this week. Thank you for participating in this. Don't just leave the tables and the chairs as they are. And the papers, I'll collect them. They do get read, so thank you for those of you who jotted down notes. We will go through those and look through them, so thank you for participating in this time. And hopefully you enjoyed it and we grow from it. So God bless, give you a great week, and we will hope to see you again next Sunday. Take care.